it's Mo. I don't know how this video is going to go because I filmed the screenshot portion of this a long time ago. Yes, we are finally talking about my RAB spreadsheet 2025. My RAB spreadsheet is a spreadsheet that I started in 2022. It is my recently acquired books spreadsheet. I wanted to see in 2022, it was my second year of BookTube. I wanted to see how many books were coming into the house. I wanted to see if I was reading those books. So I devised this spreadsheet. It has the date, the title, the author, the genre, the location that I got it, how much the book cost, if it cost anything at all, and then it also has the amount of money, totals for the month. It has what month I read these books in. It has like a little tracker. I track how many books I hauled that month, how many books I read that month, and how many books I read off of my RAB spreadsheet that month. We're going to go through everything in a minute. You're going to see everything. I continued this into 2023 and now it's 2025 and I'm continuing to continue this process of my RAB spreadsheet, my recently acquired books spreadsheet. Somewhere in there, I also made a pre-2022 tab. So every tab except the current year is now my TBR. So this is a great way that I look at books. I look at my RAB spreadsheet all the time. I look at books on my RAB spreadsheet all the time. And this is a great way to see my entire TBR. So I have my pre-2022 TBR, which like I said, I did somewhere in the middle of those years. And I just wrote down all the books that were on my TBR, my physical current TBR that hadn't already been written down in spreadsheets. So there were everything pre-2022. In the current year, I'm still adding books, adding all this information up, and this is just going to be a great resource for me forever. So let's go ahead and start watching this video that I created. I made a screen recording of myself looking at this because in the beginning of January 2025, I wanted to start adding in the books that I had gotten in January 2025. I wanted to change my 2024 recently acquired books to 2024 TBR. So this is basically what I've explained previously. I have a bunch of hidden tabs, some things that I use, some things that I don't use, and every year, besides my pre-2022 tab, I have the amount that I paid for books over the year. As the year goes on, I end up hiding those things because they just get too confusing. Since I've filled out so much of this spreadsheet already, and since I continue to fill it out as I read books, it gets really messy and crazy. I think in the end, like when I finally totally read all the books that I have from a year, it's going to look amazing, but it gets visually overwhelming, so I end up hiding a lot of stuff. Some of the things that I have hidden, especially on this first pre-2022 page, is like hold audio amount spent because I don't know how much I spent on the books that were pre. Here I am filling out some of the books that I read on audio just to see what it would look like. I don't think this is strictly necessary, but this is something that I might use later. There's a lot of data in this spreadsheet that can be filled in later and then used later. Like I would really like to see some of this data once the pages are completely filled out. And then I just hit that column because yeah, again, that's data that I think will be really interesting later, but I don't necessarily fill out at the time. Here we are moving on to 2022 TBR. You can see this is updated from 2024 and I'm just going through and unhiding everything to see what I have read, which as I go through and unhide stuff, it looks so nice because you see it really like fill up and you see so many of the like filled in cells with the pretty colors. My goal for pretty colors, every month I choose a different color for the books that I've read. Sometimes the colors make sense, sometimes they don't. Like I originally started with just a rainbow, but once I got past that, then I started going ham with all sorts of crazy different colors, which I really enjoy doing. And I love seeing it all visible, seeing it all in hidden, and seeing all the pretty colors. I do have a space for BIPOC authors, but more than use that, I usually just put a notation on the side. I do always like to see what books are written by BIPOC authors because I'm always trying to have at least 50% of my reading be BIPOC authors. This is 2022. So for 2022, I spent $383.12 total on all of the books that I acquired. And I'm not sure how many books I acquired at this very moment, but we'll look at the total price that I've paid for each year. We'll look at the total amount of books that I've gotten for each year. I'm also filling out how many books I hauled in each year because I wanted to fill that out. I have a tab that's totals from all sheets, so you'll see that. And I wanted to make sure I knew how many books I'd hauled each month because I do go ahead and fill in some more data of that while I'm going through this. So it looks like for 2022, month that I hauled the most books was April with 61 books. Oh, here we go, filling this out. So this is my total from all sheets, and you can see that I do have how much I read off the spreadsheet in each year, how much I read each year, and now I'm filling out how many I hauled in each year. And then at the bottom, I have how many DNFs, how many total hauled. I have the lowest month read, the highest month read, the most from the RAB spreadsheet, the least from the RAB spreadsheet, and then the most hauled and least hauled months. So that is 2022. Look how pretty. Oh yeah, this one, I don't know what happened. I think this was Never Let Me Go, but sometimes for some reason something doesn't get on the spreadsheet. So there are a couple of instances where that happens, and there's a couple of areas where I need to like plug one in. I might one day like condense this, like when maybe I have way less unread books than read books, maybe I'll go ahead and condense it so that you can only see the colors and then have like a auxiliary 2022 spreadsheet or whatever year it is spreadsheet. And then you can see that the dark pink, like I'm a Stranger Here Myself at the very top of the page, is books that I've put in the basement, books that I've unhauled, books that are going on collections. If I unhaul a book or DNF in a book in a month and I remember what it is, then I try to put it in that month's color. But if it's just a random unhaul, DNF, go downstairs, whatever, then I try to put it in the dark pink. So there will always be a lot of dark pink. It looks really messy when things aren't hidden, so I like to go back and hide things when I can so that I see it more clearly and it just looks nicer. I decided to go ahead on this day and make my new 2025 month list. So I'm adding some columns, I'm sorting them out. I'm going to add the months and the different categories for total read, read off spreadsheet, hauled, etc., etc. And I already started my 2025 page, so I'm just pulling it from there. Probably mid-year every year, I hide the books that I've read, like I said, just to make it less visually overstimulating. I always hide all the previous year's books that I've already read. So it is kind of a pain if I want to look back and see like when I read a book on this spreadsheet, but that's why I use Storygraph. Storygraph is my new way to find books that I've read throughout the years, and it's so easy and it's really nice. I am just hiding all these things, and then I'm going to go ahead and make New Year's things. So I think we can just speed through this a little because I'm probably going to do this for every year. And then I'm going to go to the total for all sheets and put in the hauled amount. This was something that I added later to my total sheets because I really wanted to see how many books I'd hauled versus how many I'd read from that month. 2023 looking pretty good, very colorful, so fun. I love to mess with the spreadsheet. That's one of the reasons that I look at this spreadsheet all the time, is because I love to mess with a spreadsheet. I was looking at the spreadsheet on 1/3, and so I went ahead and counted all the books that I hadn't read yet on this spreadsheet. And then we have my basement box books. So this was a project that I did, going through all the boxes in the basement. Some of the things that I kept, most of it went down to the basement. Some of them I've read. I'm trying to decide here whether I'm going to hide them, but I'm not going to hide them because it's basically like my pre-2022. This is like pre-2022, if that makes sense. So these are all the books that have been in the basement for years and years and years. You can see a whole series on that. I will leave it listed down below. This is the last screenshot that I took. This is where I'm setting up 2025. So I'm going in with my total spent, getting those dates ready, adding the sums. At the time of making this, I had acquired a couple of books already in 2025. I was on a book buying ban, so there were some caveats and some rules for this, and that's also why I didn't acquire like a lot. I did, of course, acquire a few. Here I am filling out that most hauled and least hauled section. Oh, and adding an average cost per book. That's fun. And that's it for when I filled this spreadsheet out in the very beginning of 2025. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to come back with looking at where the RAB spreadsheet is in 2025 at this time. It is now March 4th, and March is always my TBR month, so I always like to make videos. I didn't really do it in 2024 because of reasons, but I usually like to do a TBR count in March. I like to organize my TBR. I'm planning on organizing my red shelf at some point in March. I like to do a TBR tag, and I think that this is the perfect time to look at our current RAB spreadsheet as it stands now, look at some of the books, look at some of the money that I've spent, and see where we are today with how many books are on my TBR. We'll look at that together in a few moments. Okay, it is a few days later, probably more like a week later, and I need to wrap this video up. So I just wanted to go over a couple of things of note for the end of this video. Like I mentioned, I always do like TBR centric things, or I usually do TBR centric things in March, and I haven't done that last year, and I'm not really doing it this year, so I did want to do like a TBR count. I did go ahead and count on my spreadsheet how many books I had on my TBR. Those are ones that are not on my collections, not in the basement, not that I've read this year, and my grand total for books on my TBR is 1,066. So the last time that I counted, when I did this screen recording earlier this year, I only had 989. But when I first counted it, I didn't count my basement box books that I had brought up. So I added those in. That is part of the 989, but that means that I have added 77 books to my TBR. And that's not including books that I've brought in this year, but I've also read this year, or that I've read off different tabs on the spreadsheet this year. So I'm definitely over that 1,000 mark, which is a little worrisome. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my TBR. What I've been thinking about over the last week since filming the first part of this video is that I am happy to have a larger TBR than what my red shelf is. So my red shelf are books that I have read, and they're books that I keep on my shelf. They're either books that I feel some affinity for, that I really, really loved, books that I think I will reread. They're mostly all books that I think I would reread. Having my red shelf more curated makes more sense to me. Having a really large TBR that I can choose from at any time, that I can pick from, makes sense to me. My TBR is kind of like my own personal bookshop. I love to go through it. I love to look at my RAB spreadsheet. I love to find books that I've forgotten about and then I want to read. Or if I'm looking for a specific style of book, if I'm looking for instance, an Irish book in March for the Irish Readathon, or a trans book in Trans Girl April for that readathon, then I have this huge store of books, and I'll probably have something that fits the bill. So I love having the ability to sort through my TBR via my RAB spreadsheet. I love having a huge TBR to pick from. And I do love adding to my TBR because we all know that book buying and book collecting is a different hobby than book reading, but my hobbies are pretty combined. Like, I only buy used books, I don't buy new books. I only buy books some of the time. I get a lot of my books for free from little free libraries or from other people. I do love to use the library, and of course I could get the majority of books on my TBR from my library, but like my own personal library that I can just walk into the other room and pick from at a whim is just really nice for me. It's something that I enjoy, it's something I like, it's my hobby, it's the only thing that I basically spend money on, and as you can see from the RAB spreadsheet, I really don't spend that much money on it in general. I feel like I'm coming to grips with the idea of having that large of a TBR, and that my TBR will always be bigger than my red shelf, or the amount of books on my TBR will always be more than on my red shelf, which is how I would want it. The other side of that, the side that I struggle with, is the consumption side. The space obviously is a commodity, so you don't always want to give up that much space, and I have even more books that are not on my current TBR that I own, that are in the house, that are in my basement box books. Do I have too many books? Yes. Do I have more books than I will realistically read in a lifetime? Yes. The part that I struggle with is that side, thinking about it in that way and thinking about the idea of spending money on things that maybe I'll never get to. So it's a balance. I think it's a balance. In 2025, I am giving myself free rein to enjoy book buying and book collecting, to enjoy expanding my TBR as much as I want. I'm doing a series about all the book sales that I go to this year, so I will leave the first of that listed down below as well. But I think in the future, coming soon, maybe next year, maybe in 2026, I am going to have to do a year without buying books and like see how that feels. You know, do a year without collecting books, or only collecting books at little free libraries, only collecting books for free. But that doesn't feel quite right either, because I do like to participate in book sales. I like to support the places that have book sales. I like to support my local libraries. I like to support my local organizations. So I don't know. I think there's going to be some kind of balance that needs to come into play at some point. But for 2025, this is where we're at. It is March, the middle of March, and I have over 1,000 books on my TBR, and my RAB spreadsheet is up to date. So let me know if you use any kind of book tracker for the books that you have. Let me know if you put all your TBR on Goodreads. I admire the people who have like a million different shelves on Goodreads, and they put all their books on those shelves as soon as they get them. So they have like a TBR shelf, or they have like an origin of the author shelf, or whatever it is. I think that's a great idea. I don't really have the patience for that, but I do love a spreadsheet, so I have the patience for that. Let me know if you keep a spreadsheet. Let me know if you can see any improvements to my spreadsheet. It's very rudimentary. It's very basic, so I would love tips and tricks. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.